G'day everybody, welcome back to Photo Australia. Grant, it's been a while since I've said that.
Who are you again? Sorry?
Just move your microphone a bit closer there, Grant.
Who are you again?
It's
Hi,
been a while since we've been in the studio.
We have been really slack. We're very sorry, but we have been busy. We've been very busy. So we're back with another episode. A short one, this one, but
we are.
We're going to lay the groundwork for a bit more to come in the very near future.
There is a few things that have changed on my photography front. I certainly sent the message out to the camera clubs to freak them out. Well, not camera clubs, I said my camera club, to freak them out. I said, oh, it's all got to go. Got to sell all my equipment. It's all got to go. And not that many people fell for it, Grant. I think they knew. I think they know me a little too well.
I think it was just a general sort of sigh at that. Oh,
it was really a bit of a sigh. So I have actually gone mirrorless, Grant.
Oh, well. That's all right, Brad. You can go mirrorless.
So okay. I got my new toy here. So I've stick with Nikon, of course, because that's what I'm used to. And I got the Z9. So bit of a change from my D5 and D850. So I've still got my D5 here at the moment, which I'm getting ready for sale. But in another video, I'm going to just do a comparison video between the two. Yep. But one thing I'd love to go over, and while Grant's here as well, is you go and you buy this new toy, and as much as you're so excited to get it out and get it dirty, as mine did, mine got hit with salt last night, I was out shooting along the beach, is things that you should do when you've got a brand new camera. Something we haven't covered yet, and I thought it was a chance to give my opinion on what I do for a new camera. I'm sure everybody's different on what they do. But it's things that you probably should consider, and it's best to do it while they're new. You haven't got scratches on it. A lot of it's just cosmetic stuff that I do. Yeah, any thoughts from you to start with, Grant, before I start getting into it?
Yeah, check the Visa card statement, probably the first one.
Visa card. You had to bring up Visa card. Well, I think mine's just about ready to be chopped up. If I hand it to somebody to a store, I'm sure the scissors are going to be coming out very soon.
I walked in here this morning, folks, and there was a distinct smell of burning plastic as I came up the driveway. It was actually pretty pungent, but anyway.
It is. Yeah. Well, now people are probably thinking with the word pungent, they probably think, geez, Brad stinks.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thanks, Grant. Thanks, Grant.
What do you do when you get a new camera? Look, I like to sit down. I unbox it, of course, go through all that, make sure it's all there. And I like to sit down and have a leisurely look through the owner's manual.
Yep.
That's my first approach to it, Brad.
Absolutely.
I generally, if I do that of an evening, I'd open a nice bottle of Currency Creek Red, and I would settle back and have a leisurely look through the manual.
I bet you a lot don't. I bet you their first thing is
Brad,
they probably don't even charge the battery, they turn it on.
Yeah.
That's probably the first thing they do.
Do you know the best book you can get for your new camera? And I've seen people rush off and buy, books from other publishers on makes of camera.
For Dummies comes to mind.
Read the bloody owner's manual, for God's sake. It's the best publication there is for your camera, written by the people that build it, so they might even have an idea of what they're talking about. And just familiarise yourself with all the buttons and things it does. Don't assume too much, because you've changed models. In Brad's case, he's got no mirror now to look into. So he has to think a little bit differently, and there may well be different functions in that camera. So that's my first step. Have a leisurely look through the book with the camera by my side.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree, Grant. The things that I do as far as protection, I'm going to first start with protection for the cameras. Is now this one's sort of a bit of an optional thing. It's something I like to do is because I've bought new lenses as well to fit the new mount of my mirrorless, hence why my credit card is smoking at the moment, is I buy a good quality UV filter. And the only reason is the type of photography I do. I do go out into some very nasty environments where it could be blowing with sand, it could be wet environments. And one thing I do a lot of is I always cleaning my front lens because you get grime and stuff on the front. So I tend to like to have just a little extra layer of protection. So I always, if my lens can take it, not all my lenses can take it, but if my lens can have a filter screwed on, I usually do buy a good quality filter. And the main thing is I'm always cleaning the front lens because I always get muck on it. And that's only because of the environment that I'm in. So for me, I recommend that, but it's not necessary if you're careful. But the other thing that I like about it is, not that I've ever dropped anything, is that if you do drop it, and Grant's going to come in with another thing that you should always do. I'll pass to him. But if something does come at the face of the lens, I have actually seen a UV filter save a lens before. Now, part 2 of that, Grant, on the front of the lens, because you were saying it last night, and once again, I'm in total agreement of what Grant's about to say, is what you should do when you're shooting. And I'm pointing my camera up here. Go for it, Grant.
Yeah, your lens hood, folks. Always attach the lens hood.
Always put your lens hood on.
Always important. I have stood alongside people. Hello, Dave. How you doing, mate? On a shoot in Canada, and Dave was alongside me. We're in the dark. We're shooting a storm off in the distance, and next minute there was this horrible sound alongside me of something heavy hitting the ground, followed by Dave sobbing as his camera toppled off the tripod.
It's a lot cheaper to replace this bit of plastic, the lens hood, if you've got it on. I always store all my lenses with it. Well, it's folded around the other way, but make sure that you put it on, so that otherwise, especially on a tripod, I've seen tripods go over plenty of times.
That's right.
And it's not nice. You can replace this, but replacing a lens can hurt.
Lens hood will absorb a lot of impact. So again, look, with the
I do both. Yeah. I put a filter on, and that's the biggest reason is because I do wipe my front of my lens a lot, and lenses are pretty tough, and they've got tough coatings on them. So I leave that up to the user. For me, I like to just be a bit careful, and I always have a UV filter on. But yes, the lens hood, especially if accidentally dropping something, you do have that layer of protection.
Yeah, I'm not such a fan for the UV filter. I see it as another layer of glass between me and my subject. But I fully understand Brad's reasons for doing it. And if you're going to do it, keep it clean.
And don't cheap out. In my opinion, I don't cheap out on that.
Exactly.
These, and it's another cost. I'm paying $300-400 for a professional, because Grant's exactly right. When you start stacking more glass on the front, you are cutting light as well, but you are putting another piece of glass in front. Don't cheap out on it. If you've paid, unless it's a real cheap lens and it doesn't worry you, but if you've paid for a pro high quality lens, sticking a piece of glass on the front, it's the same as if you're going for a UV filter, or not UV, a neutral density filter, any of those sorts of things. Don't cheap out on them. Buy good quality glass, because you've spent all that money on a lens and a camera body. You don't cheap out on that either. So
what do you call a good screw-on brand, Brad? Where
I don't really want to push one brand ahead of another, but you'll find in a lot of most brands will have a pro range and a normal range. And you'll find, I'll tell you the brand I'm using the Hoya, but there are other brands out there, and you probably can't tell the difference in quality. But I'm putting on the very best Hoya filters, but they're as I say, they're expensive. You can pay up to $300-400, depending on your size. So they are expensive filters, but once again, you want nice, sharp, clear, well manufactured, so that you're not, destroying the optics of your lens.
Yep. No, look, Hoya is a good brand. I wouldn't argue with that. Others that I would recommend, and that are in my bag as well, are the B and W, not BMW, but B and W, the German brand, and Marumi, Marumi, Japanese brand. It's actually my favourite brand of filters. They make some very thin-edged filters, and I really like that brand. I think they do an excellent job. So
there are a good number of brands, and good quality. But yeah, if they've got a pro range, definitely go the pro range.
Absolutely.
And like I said, same with your neutral density filters, which I'm haven't bought any yet. So that's my next purchase if my credit card holds up. Poor thing. Is that I'm gonna buy some ND filters. The other thing that I do to all my cameras and a lot of my equipment, most modern cameras have got touch screens on the back, and I definitely recommend this to all users. If you haven't put one on, even if it's a camera that you currently got and you've had it for a few years, I still highly recommend this. And the reason is that I've seen a lot of cameras that haven't got this protection is you can buy screen protectors. So if you do them from new, you know that your screen is undamaged. And they've got glass ones. There's many brands on the market. I went to Camera House, which is here in Australia. You can actually find your model of camera, and they've got them already pre-cut glass ones now, or crystal ones, I think they call them, which are good for touchscreen. And you can look up your model of camera, and you can just buy them straight online, and they ship it straight out to you. So all my cameras, I used to cut them myself, but they've all gone to this crystal type one, so you can't cut them. But I would highly recommend doing that, because when you go to sell, and I've sold one camera body already, and it was one that I had cut myself, and I was able to just peel it off, and it just, when you're selling an article to someone, there's no scratches on it, looks brand new, cleaned up the camera, and not that it was that old, but you're then passing on an article that's not all scratched. It happens when you're putting cameras in and out of camera bags, and that you'll be surprised how that those screens can get marked. So I highly recommend it for all my camera gear. So yeah, it's definitely worth the money to put in it, and that, because you can just peel it off.
Indeed. No, that is sound advice, folks. Very sound advice.
The other thing that after you've read the manual is also check what the high speed cards you need for your new camera. So I've had to buy new, they're like an XQD card, that I've had to go and buy a higher speed, because my camera can handle a lot higher. It's a higher megapixel. It needs the extra speed of the card if you're going to start rattling off. It's a faster shutter speed camera too. So make sure that you put the right cards in your camera too. So you might have to buy another, which I've had to do, buy another couple of new cards for your camera, which are faster. I'm going to just hook my camera up to the computer. So this is a Nikon camera. So some of you won't get the menu, but the Nikon people will. So I'll turn my camera on. So if we bring up our menu, the first thing I do is through the first camera menu, being Nikon, and I'll look at the file size to make sure. Usually it's always set on the highest setting, but you'll find that a lot of cameras, if you go for Nikon, its image quality, it will shoot a RAW and a JPEG. Now, for me personally, I just shoot RAW. I don't have two files on my camera. It depends how you shoot. So the first thing I always check is that I'll move it to my setting of RAW. That way I'm only getting one file per photo, and I'm using software to edit. For me, I select the ISO setting. I don't have it on auto. But if you are an auto ISO user, and I was actually talking to a member last night, that he put it on auto and he was wondering why he was getting some grainy photos. So if you are an auto ISO user, make sure that you change the setting, and you might have to experiment with your camera, find out where it starts to get grainy. If you have a look at this one, I've just turned on the auto ISO again. It's set on 25,600 now. I can tell you now, even with this new camera, it's going to be very grainy at 25,600. It will take a photo, but you'll wonder why there's so much grain. And your camera will use that whole range if it has to. So I always, like I said, you have to experiment. But with this camera, I wouldn't go over 12,800. With other cameras, I would think 6,400 would even be pushing it. So if you are an auto ISO user, I'd definitely set the maximum that it will use on auto. For me, I'm a manual ISO user, so I select the ISO for the camera. So I turn auto off, but that's for the way I photograph. My white balance, I've heard a lot of people talk about this. I have for many, many years have shot on a manual white balance. I have found, unless you're under weird lights or lighting inside, like fluoros or anything like that, where I find that I can fix it in software in any case. I actually have a manual setting of 5,000, so my camera just does not shift off of 5,000 Kelvin. I've heard people argue for and against, and it's up to you how you want to set it. For me, it's just one less thing that the camera has to worry about, and I have to worry about when I'm shooting, that I might end up with different scenarios of white balance. It works for me. I can easily change it in software if it's a problem. And out of all the years, one of the pro photographers told me to do it. And for all the years, it's never been an issue for me. So that's why I go with manual white balance. What's your thoughts on that, Grant?
My cameras are set to auto white balance, but in Lightroom or DxO or On One, whichever one I'm using, Raw Therapy, I will go into the white balance settings, and I will have a look at its auto and camera settings. I think are the two options, and I do have a little look there, because there can be a slight but significant difference in those two. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, Brad, and it would probably be the same thing. If you set it to 5,000 Kelvin, then you'd probably still want to go into the white balance setting and just have a quick look to see how it was being read there. So.
And you can. And most cameras are that good these days. They do select the right scenario.
Yeah.
But I have found, I guess it's just the way that I work through photos. I rarely have to hit white balance, like change white balance in my photos. And yeah, like I said, it just takes one variable out. Unless you take a photo of something and you go, oh, geez, the white balance looks off there, and like I said, you can then just fix it in software. So
and it's an easy check, folks.
It's a very easy check.
Very easy check. Probably where it gets a little more critical, Brad, is in portraiture work, particularly colour portraiture. If you're doing that, or people shots, you want to really pay attention to your white balance there, because that can become critical.
Absolutely.
On your skin tones, etc.
And in that scenario, I'd even use white balance cards to make sure you get the white balance in the right environment. That's a bit of my video sides coming out on that sort of thing.
Yep.
So getting back to, for me, I put a manual white balance in, but once again, that's just my settings. Colour space is usually fine. It's on sRGB. If you're shooting RAW, it doesn't matter. Because you're getting a raw photo, and then it's your software. If you're going to export it, well, then you export it into whatever color format you want, whether it be Adobe RGB or Photo Pro or sRGB. So that actually doesn't come into it for the file itself.
Brad, have you noticed I don't know where I read this recently, but ProPhoto RGB from Adobe
Yep.
has lost a lot of favour of late, apparently. It's even on some software and some cameras, it's, I believe, no longer being offered. I could be wrong there, but
It's
I was reading something on it, and it has lost a bit of favour. I mean, I've used it a bit, but if I ever have a photo that I'm viewing on a different system and I see an issue, generally it'll be related back to a ProPhoto, where something in the pipeline isn't reading ProPhoto very well.
Yep. Yep. The other thing I look at, there's a lot here that I haven't touched from factory, but you can. Ones that I have played a bit with is the long exposure noise reduction. There's pluses and minuses in that. If you want me to go in more depth, leave a comment below. But currently it's off because, once again, software can do so much for you these days. A lot of the other stuff there I haven't touched. The other thing I just check on is the metering. Because I always shoot with matrix metering, which I think if you change this, you have to really know what you're doing. If you're going to spot metering or center weighted metering, I think that's fine as long as you know what the camera's doing when you take those photos. I find the cameras are really good these days at working out the metering of a photo, like measuring light. So I just make sure it's on matrix, which is basically taking the whole frame into consideration.
Yep.
That's usually standard for the cameras to be on that.
Yep.
The autofocus area mode, that I do change because usually it's on a dynamic type or multiple spot focus. I have been for a long time, and this could be changing a bit with the new technology, but I have always been a single point focus person. And the reason that I'm like that is quite often I'll use aperture priority, which means I'm dropping the background out of focus or the foreground out of focus. So I use a single point in my frame of I choose what I want to be absolutely sharp and the rest to blur out. So once again, if you haven't used this function before, you would have to learn how it works and test yourself with it. Otherwise, you'll find out, oh, this isn't in focus. It focused on the tree in the background. So there are traps with this, but if you know your camera, you know what you're focusing on. I'm a single point focus person, but that could be changing a little bit with the new technology, which I may touch on. I'll probably touch on it with the camera comparison because this actually has a couple of new features that people have been raving about. So I'm very interested in that. But so I've changed that.
And Brad, can I just add in that when you're doing that, and I assume the Nikon will allow you to fine-tune your focus point.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Just do a little test on whether you're front focusing or back focusing.
Yeah, yeah.
It can be a critical point, and you can do it. You can print things off the internet. You can get focusing charts. There's one actually by a Nikon or someone that's a Nikon user. That's a very good one. I use a simple little system. I just grab a few AA batteries and line them up on a desk in a well lit situation, and shoot down at roughly 45 degrees within my focusing distance of the lens, and fire off a few shots and just look at them on the viewfinder and just see where the camera is actually focused on.
Yep.
And it's a quick and dirty test, but it can highlight a problem if you have one.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's the key there too, Grant. Once you do these settings, always muck around with your camera and test it out before you go out in the field somewhere.
Yep.
So one thing that I forgot to mention also, this camera has dual card slots. Not all cameras have got dual card slots, but some do. You can actually tell it what it's going to do with that second slot. So in my camera mode, with the Nikons, you've got different modes that you can set settings for, and most cameras are like this. So in my camera mode, I'm using the second slot as an overflow. So it will fill up the first camera card, then it will flow over and start filling up the second camera card. Crossing to video, this is for people who shoot video. I do a little bits and pieces, and mainly for this channel, I'll actually film a bit of video. So I have to set up the settings in the video of my cameras also. A lot of people don't use video, so you can ignore this, but I actually set up, especially for that second card slot, is I always tell it to put the video on the second card. So the first card is always free for photos, and then it will use a second card if it fills up. But for video, it will not put it on the first card. That's always reserved for photos. So it will only put it on the second card. That's just easy for me when I come in, and if I want to download the video here at the studio, I always know it's the second card. So I just whip the second card out, and it's not going to fill up my whole camera up full of video and not have any space for photos. So for me, that's very important. The other thing that you should go through is the quality video. And I've been mucking around with the menu in this too, because this will actually shoot up to 8K, which is crazy. So I'm not wanting to shoot 8K. So go through, find out the video type that you want to edit in, and change that. So that depends on your software and what you're trying to achieve, and the size. I'm going to start trying to shoot 4K, and hopefully get to a stage where I'll be uploading videos in 4K to give you that bit better quality on, because YouTube drops the quality down a lot. So I'm going to hopefully eventually get up to the 4K stage. Depends on how long it takes me to upload the videos, but I'm going to start filming in 4K. Just in case that I'm going to go up that next level of quality. Once again, in the video, it's got an ISO maximum sensitivity. So I have dropped it down to 12,800, which is probably on the verge of graininess for this camera, but I haven't tested that yet. And I've put those manual settings in as well. So that's probably the basics that I put in. The other thing is a lot of these cameras have got function buttons as well, which is where you want to read your book and see what you can program to your function buttons. And this all comes down to user preference. So if you've got a particular function that you use all the time on the camera, quite often you can assign that to a button. It's its own separate button, which comes in handy. And I'm actually loving the new camera with the new lenses, because it's actually got, with the mirrorless, it's actually got a function button on the lens that I can put on there, which is actually fantastic. So I've been playing around with that. So that's the rough breakdown of it. I can't think of anything else that you have to really do. The other thing is take the time and fill out the warranty on it. I think a lot of people forget about that. It's very important when you buy a new camera, fill out the warranty, lodge it with the company. They're all things that you should do straight away, so that, go back to our cameras here, so that you can, if you do have a problem, you've already done that. It's all done. It's in the system, and it just makes things a lot smoother. If you do have a problem, to claim it back, you've done all those things. So, yeah.
Now, Brad, I assume that this is also a weatherproof camera?
I wouldn't throw it in a bucket of water, but yes, the newer cameras have got weather guarding on them.
Why? That's what we're going to do.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are. We're going to test this thing out first.
No, we're not. We're not.
He's got no sense of
No
humour.
way. No way. But yes, they're the newer cameras. I think just about all brands now aren't they, Grant? All pretty much weatherproofed.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean go out in a swimming pool and swim with it.
No, don't do that. But it's an important feature. If you're caught in the shower of rain, or and if you come back to a car, even if you put the camera under your jacket and you come running back to the car in the rain, this is the process you'll follow. You'll hit the remote to unlock the car. As you approach the car, you'll yank the door open, you'll put the camera in on the seat, and you'll pull off the jacket that you're wearing and throw it in after camera before you get in. So you're just throwing a dripping wet jacket in on top of your camera.
And charge
weatherproofing does come in handy in all sorts of scenarios.
And please charge your batteries before you start playing. I know that you can't wait to sort of, you know, fire up and take a photo with your new toy, but you can, depending on the charge level of the battery, you can actually decrease the battery life by not charging it straight away. It depends how long it's been sitting. Mind you, I don't think this camera was sitting around long, but you know, it depends how long the battery's been sitting on a shelf, and if it's low and you start throwing load on it, you can damage that battery. So make sure you charge it up before you use it. Oh, just one thing to add as well is make sure that you check up your firmware. So yes, would you agree with that, Grant?
Absolutely, and just check back with the manufacturer's website from time to time, because they do upgrade them, update them, and that is important to keep that up to date, in my humble opinion. I know some people will go against that and think, you know, if it ain't broke, why fix it? But they don't release the firmware updates if there isn't a reason. So I would certainly do it.
I've found with the Z7, which is my mum's camera, she's had a lot of firmware updates, and some of them actually added new features.
Yep.
So and also, you know, you get your fixes where the camera will respond better with a new firmware update. So yeah, no, I totally agree. Even with a new camera, check that there's firmware, because you might be thinking, oh well, this is a new camera, but quite often they've been manufactured and it takes a long time before it gets to the end user, and there could be 1 or 2 firmware updates that's come out since your camera's been manufactured. So yeah, protect your camera and happy shooting.
Indeed. And Brad, I feel a Flinders trip coming on.
Oh, this thing's fully charged. I've already got some salt on it.
This thing needs proper testing.
It needs testing. It hasn't
got one of the best environments we could hope to find.
It hasn't got red dust on it yet, Grant. No, we got to get it nice and red.
Stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned.
So with that, I'll do a comparison video of the 2 units, seeing that they're very similar cameras. One being mirrored and one being mirrorless. So one's weight, but geez, there's a difference. Yeah, I'll do a quick comparison video on the 2 cameras. And
Brad, I'd like to send a little cheerio if I could.
Absolutely.
To one of our probably our biggest fan, Keith. Keith's going through a bit of a tough time at the moment. So, mate, we are thinking of you, and we wish you all the very, very best.
Yes, hang in there, buddy.
Cheers, mate.
And, yeah, we'll start pumping out videos, Grant.
We will. We're back, folks. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Catch you later.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.